I have 6:30 p.m. and I will call the Newport City Council meeting to order for Monday, November 16th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. This is a remote meeting. Currently connected is Dan Ross, Melissa Pedersen, John Wilson, and Kevin Charbonneau. They are connected remotely. In the City Council room is the City Manager, Laura Dogan, City Clerk Treasurer, James Johnson, Chief of Police, Travis Bingham, and Fire Chief, John Hollimer. That is, I believe, everybody who is in the council room. And with that, I will ask item number 2, which is to approve the minutes of November 2nd, 2020. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Wilson moves to approve the minutes of 2 November 2020.
A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Melissa, I'll second.
Made by Mr. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Pedersen. Discussion on the motion? Then hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Item number 2, comments by members of the public. Okay, there are no comments by members of the public. We'll move on to the budget review of administration and police, and we'll set the budget review schedule. The way this will work this evening is how we did it a year ago in the council room. The item will be presented to the City Council, the budget item. The council members will have a chance to ask questions and have answers to their questions, and then I will open it up to members of the public to ask questions regarding the budget discussion of the department that we're discussing this evening. And so this is what we did last year when we met in person, but I'm going to be doing it the same way this year, even though it's a remote meeting. So once again, we'll have the budget presented to the council by each department head. It will be opened up to questions from council members and then questions from members of the public who are connected to the remote meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it is that time of year again when we have together all of our department heads, our city clerk and treasurer, and the mayor to start to present the FY 21-22 budget to the city council. The FY 21-22 budget would go into effect July 1st, 2021 until June 30th, 2022. The budget is for our operational expenses and our capital expenses for during that time frame. What we have done in the past is presented 2 departments per evening and outlined the presentations exactly the way the mayor has described. The department heads are presenting their budgets to the city council. Once the city council adopts that budget, it becomes the city council's budget to present to the taxpayers at town meeting held in March. We have proposed the following schedule for our budget review. Tonight, we will look at admin and police. At the December 7th meeting, we propose to look at the fire department and the recreation department. And at the December 21st meeting, we propose to look at public works and what is called as other on our website. Other contains our debt service as well as capital, and the ambulance is scheduled to come and present that night as well. I have presented and pasted on our website the audit, the results of the annual audit. Just to refresh your memory, at the last meeting held November 2nd, the council approved the restricted funds. Once that happens, the audit can go to final print. The audit is posted on our website. The council members each have a hard copy. If anybody has any questions about that, please don't hesitate to ask. That body of work started at the end of, well, beginning of July this year and was just finished a couple of weeks ago. That is For us, that's where the rubber meets the road, if you will. That validates our actions and our philosophies in managing the budget. That is our accountability. So to get a response from our auditor that is favorable is very pleasing to us. So when you hear me frequently refer to the audit, that's why. That's our validation. The other thing that I wanted to mention tonight as we present this proposed budget is the amount of work and forethought that we put into it, given that we are in a pandemic. I don't want to overplay it. I don't want to underplay it either, because as you will see as we go through each department, the COVID-19 has had a substantial impact on our operations. In some areas, we saved money because we had to stop working. In other areas, such as recreation, our revenues did not come in anywhere near where we had expected. So in order not to overspend our budget, we had to stop doing certain things. So it's with that level of respect and unknown and conservative perspective that we present the FY21-22 budget to the City Council. And what I would ask the Mayor to do, tonight we're going to start with administration. Again, these sheets are posted on our website, and if you go to our main page and scroll down to recent news, all of this body of work is shown right there. What I want to show you is if you go to the admin page and you scroll, well, what we do is the first thing we do is look at the bottom line. If you look at the bottom line on admin, you're going to notice there's a negative 2.12% increase from last year. In this year's budget, there are no surprises for admin. Admin encompasses the City Council, the City Manager's Office, delinquent tax collection, election expense, City Treasurer, the audit and the city report, tax listing, the city clerk, corporate counsel, planning and zoning, and the municipal building, plus the reappraisal. It is lower than it was last year because all of our equipment is functioning. We don't have any unusual supplies that are required this year. You'll notice in municipal building that the numbers that are listed there are the same as they were last year. I just want to check one thing before I say that. And the reason for that is we expect our current employee to retire within the next couple of months. So we believe that the next person coming in will be of a different pay scale. So we've accommodated for that. I believe there's only, is there one election next year, Jim? Or two elections that we budgeted for?
Hopefully only one.
The number of elections is lesser than normal. Sometimes you have two elections in a year. Next year you'll have one. Last year we had 3 elections. All of the numbers that are installed throughout the budget for personnel expenses, retirement, Social Security, health insurance, workman's comp, unemployment compensation, life, accidental death and disability, the HRA expense, the health insurance opt-out, those categories are in every department. Those numbers are fixed. So you're going to see some fluctuation in those numbers based on the number of employees and the jobs that they do. That's really all I have for administration, unless the members of the City Council might have some questions.
Are there questions from City Council members?
Kevin Charbonneau.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Is there any indication of how much insurance will go up?
Medical insurance? I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
Kevin, were you referring to medical insurance?
Do we know how much the medical insurance is going to go up?
Yes, we do. The numbers that you see in the budget on any medical insurance line reflect the budget. I almost think it was 7%. We're staying with MVP. Their increase was less than Blue Cross Blue Shield. We've been with MVP, I believe this is our 3rd year. And throughout that time frame, I believe they've had a lesser increase than Blue Cross Blue Shield, at least for 2 of the last 3 years. Actually, Becky just texted and confirmed that the medical insurance went up 5%.
Oh, that's very good. I know Blue Cross Blue Shield went up in the double digits, so good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from city council members? Okay. Any questions from anyone who's part of the meeting this evening regarding the administrative budget?
Yes, can you tell me how much of the clerk's salaries are being paid by the water budget? And if it's changed?
The amount, the percentage of the water budget that pays for the clerk's salary is 15%.
Is that the same as last year?
Yes.
Yes.
Other questions from anyone on taking part in the meeting regarding the administrative budget?
Oh, I have one other question, which is, this year, are we going to look at the water budget the way we look at all the other budgets, so that at least we know that the city council has approved the water budget?
The city council does not approve the water budget. The rates are set by the water and sewer commissioners, which are comprised of the city council members. The city council, when in their role as water commissioners, just mandated meters. So no, the water and sewer budget is not reviewed because it is not approved by the voters.
No,
the rates are set by the water and sewer commissioners.
I'm not talking about the rates. The rates are set to compensate for the expenses. What I'm asking is if you won't look this year at what the water expenses are that create a reason for you to vote for the rates. No one's looking at what the expenses are and whether or not, just as all these expenses are reviewed by you, the city council, sitting as the water commissioners, should be reviewing those expenses. I'm not saying anything's wrong with them, but certainly we don't just let this budget the way it exists go through without city council looking at it. The same should be done for the water budget, not the rates, the expenses.
The city council reviews the water budget, as does the public. When we submit budgets once a month, they're all posted on our website.
Not the same as doing an annual review.
Okay. We're discussing the administration budget this evening. Once again, the water and sewer are enterprise funds. The expenses are what's required to run those two facilities, water and sewer. That is what is required to run it. You have to raise the appropriate revenues in order to run the operations. And the expenses are reviewed every month by the city council. Warrants are signed off. And so that is different than the budget that the taxpayers, the funds are raised via the tax rate. Are there any other questions on the administration budget? Then we'll move to the police department budget.
I'm just going to step to the side while Chief Bingham comes here. I'm very pleased with the work that Chief Bingham did at his first budget this year, and he'll go through the details with you.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Mayor and council members. Like the city manager said, this is my first budget, and I definitely enjoyed putting this together. I definitely learned a lot. So I think I'm going to break this down as I'm just going to go through this from each category. So we'll go over the revenue, the administration, the police patrol, and the police dispatch. And at the end of each section, I think I'll just stop there. And if we have any questions that you guys want to ask me at that point, then we can do it there. And then at the very end, if we have any more questions that we want to follow up on, we'll ask it at that time. So we'll jump right into the first section at the top for the police department is the revenue. So a couple of things there that I want to point out. You'll see things under there such as the stop grant that we have put in as 0, and the same with the Vermont Drug Task Force, that is in there at 0. And the reasoning for that is because these are grants, and we don't want to put in the budget for positions that we're not guaranteed to get every year, because if we don't have them, then we still have to pay these officers. So that's why those are at 0. The other thing at the very bottom that I want to point out is the dispatch income. 2497. So you'll see that that jumps up from 50 to 63,000 this year, and that is because we're going to be bringing on another agency at the beginning of the new year. And there's definitely talks with other agencies coming on. Nothing has been solidified at this point, but I do expect more than just one, but I know one for sure, so that's why I put that number in there at that. So that's why that increase is there. And as far as revenue goes, there wasn't really a whole lot else under there. Does the council members have any questions about any of that? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll move on to administration. So there's a 3% increase that was put in for myself in my position. And as we go down through here, you'll see that there is a lot of down 52%, down 45% for vacation holidays, and down 45 cents for the or 45% for the salary. And the main reason behind all this, and at the very bottom, you'll see that it's down 33%. That's because the lieutenant position that was created in the last budget has been removed from administration. So there's no longer a lieutenant position. So that's why that number is down so low. And when we go over the patrol section, I'll explain how those numbers are affected by that change. But you'll see the big thing in the admin section is that the lieutenant spot was removed, and the admin section is essentially just for the chief now. So is there any questions on any of that from the council members? Okay, hearing nothing, I will move on to the patrol section. So this is like I said before. So the first thing I want to point out is under the salary. So it went from 544,656 to 602,588. So there looks like there's a 10% increase there. Some of this we can't control because these members are in the bargaining unit and they have their 3-year bargaining agreement that they came up with the city manager and council. So that stuff, some of it can't be controlled, but the 10% increase, that's where that extra officer was at, is in there from the administration. So we essentially removed the lieutenant spot and added it underneath the patrol. We didn't create another position, we didn't add another officer, we just moved some, basically moved a position around that's back in the union. Going down through, Laura hit on it a little bit, but you'll see some changes, and you know, these are kind of best guesses changes that we can do and the HRA, the health insurance opt-out. These are kind of our best guesses that we can come up with and try to predict the best we can. So there's some different numbers there, and the same goes for the buyout portion. So turning over to still on the police patrol side of things, one of the key areas that I really wanted to focus on was training. You'll see an increase in the training budget. I did increase that for a couple reasons. One being, you know, the reform that this nation's going through as far as police response. When it comes to training our officers, we have to make sure that they're getting the most adequate training that's out there. Every officer is required to do at least 30 hours of training a year. That's minimum. You know, I want to do better than that, and I want to make sure that we're training for stuff that maybe the legislature is going to mandate that we have to do, and I don't want to be behind the 8 ball when it comes to that. So I want to have a little extra cushion in there for that, and I mean, we can use this for diversity training, use of force training, de-escalation training, like those kind of things. And I think that this area is really important for me when it comes to the patrol side of things. The other thing that I want to point out at the bottom is the bulletproof vest. You'll see that this went back to 0 from the previous year, and that's because we had moved the restricted funds that was just approved over, so we have some money left in there to use for that. So those are the key highlights for the patrol side of things. Does anybody from the council have any questions on that? Okay, so hearing nothing, we'll move on to the dispatch. Kind of the same thing here. So we did have a new hire in dispatch that came in. You know, that's why you see the -11 in vacation time, newer hires, so they don't get as much vacation time, those kind of things. And again, when you go down to the health insurance and the workman's comp, these are the best educated guesses that we came up with, and that's why we came up with the decrease that you see there. We still currently have 4 dispatchers. We do have some part-time dispatchers as well. We're sitting in a pretty good spot with all that. But you'll see that the total police dispatch is down 7% based on these numbers that we came up with. And then I would just like to point out at the very bottom, the total police budget is down 0.8%. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about anything that I just went over, but I'll open it up.
Chief, do you think you have enough in the training line item? Because knowing the legislature, I believe, just passed some police reforms, and I didn't know if with that legislation that passed, it's going to require even more training than what you may have budgeted for.
Yeah, so it could require every law enforcement officer in the state of Vermont to be trained, not trained, but retrained in certain areas. And the way I came up with this number was essentially a day of training, an extra day of training for all of our officers is how I kind of came up with that. Is it enough? This is my best guess that I could come up with. We do have pretty adequate training here, but I wanted to be able to make sure that I was able to provide that if it comes down the road, which it looks like it's probably going to.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members of the City Council for Chief Bingham? Any questions from anybody who's taking part in the remote meeting this evening?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Fitzroy, could you please ask the chief why he eliminated the lieutenant's position and if that means anything for the department?
I'll let the chief answer that.
Yep, sure. So the decision was based on what I thought was best for the department, and by eliminating that position at this point in time is what I thought was best. I don't have any plans in the near future to reinstate that position right now. We're currently still down 2 full-time spots, so that's my priority, trying to fill those.
Mr. Mayor, how much, I couldn't see the screen, how much of a savings is that by eliminating that position? And I think the chief was a former lieutenant, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So the total admin is down 33% by getting rid of the lieutenant's position.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, this is Ann Chiarello again, I'd like to ask Chief Bingham, I've noticed something about stone gardens there. Do you regard stone garden as an expense for us? I thought stone garden gave us money.
I'm not sure where you're seeing that under the expenses. It's under the revenue.
Oh, it is. Then that's fine.
Yep.
I mean, I thought I saw it under expenses. Thank you.
Yes. No, it's under revenue, and we still do actively participate in that program.
Are we, by the way, in terms of that, are we actively involved in making arrests of people who are, I don't know, crossing the border?
I guess I'm not sure. Are we actively involved in arresting people that cross the border?
Yes,
Is that the
that's part of Stone Garden.
Yeah, so the mission of Stone Garden is we assist United States Border Patrol in their mission. So we do patrol the borders, and if we come across something, and the mission is to help deter drug crossing the border, domestic terrorism, those kinds of things, and that's the point behind that program.
So you could get involved in arresting a migrant worker or something?
Not necessarily, because that's not what we're out there looking for. We're looking for people that are illegally crossing the border, and we're looking for people that are bringing illegal activity that comes with crossing the border and those kinds of things.
Thank you.
And Chief, when you look at the revenue side, of course, you don't know if Stone Garden's continuing, so you actually have put zero revenue in the budget, because once again, that's just a grant that you may or may not get.
Correct.
Any other questions from anyone taking part in the remote meeting? If there are no questions, thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members.
And I believe the city manager is got some other items in the budget that she wanted to go over.
I think the other stuff to point out is stuff we'll go over in detail on December 21st when we do the debt service and other. And one thing I want to point out, I want to draw your attention to on that page is that the 5-year capital expense, which you approved in last December, is starting to come into fruition with year 1. So you're going to see some of the planned approved expenses from that project, from that program coming into play in your capital expenses. One of those things is in debt service, where the police are now moving towards a locker room on the first floor, also known as the basement of this building. That's something that has been discussed for a number of years, and now it's finally coming to fruition. And COVID-19 has certainly propelled that to the forefront. So when we get to capital expenditures, or debt service and capital expenditures on December 21st, all the department heads will be presenting at that meeting to talk about the large ticket items they have budgeted. So expect police locker room to be discussed on that evening. And of course, the rotation of the police car which happens once a year, is also under debt service. So I just wanted to point that out to folks in advance. And other than that, for tonight's purposes, that's all we have. And as I mentioned, at our next meeting, which is scheduled for December 7th, we'll be putting the fire department and the recreation department on the agenda for those two to be reviewed by the council. And that's all I have.
Any questions?
One thing that I was just reminded to mention in the budget for the police department is also tasers. So tasers need to be replaced every 10 years or so, is it? 11 years? Every 5 years. Yeah. So the other thing you're going to notice in that budget is it's in the capital expenditures, not debt service, is radios, police department, tech equipment, fleet replacement. And there's $5,000 that are budgeted in there, along with their bulletproof vests and their dispatch equipment. And again, those are reserve funds that the City Council approved starting 2 years ago. And you see those reflected in the restricted. So those funds are always available in the event of an unexpected emergency. If all the tasers went out at once, there would be funds there to replace them. But tasers have a limited lifespan, and they're very expensive to buy the tase, right? There's equipment that goes inside. Yeah. And Travis will explain more about that in much more logical detail than I can this evening. So stay tuned for that on the Monday before Christmas.
Okay. Then I guess if there's no other questions, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the EV car charging station rates and fees. And we received a memo from the city manager regarding the recommended rates and fees. And I'll let the city manager do a brief summary of the memo.
Thank you. This is exciting. This is one of those projects that came out of the RCDI grant, was filed for an application with council approval in April of 2019. And the EV car charging station is now up and running. In your memo, you'll see the amount of the grant award was for $21,000, and the total project costs were $24,433. The majority of the labor was done by our Public Works Department, and other expenses were associated with having Velco install a meter and do the electric work to attach the EV car charging station to the transformer, which is behind People's Bank. So in order to prepare for our ribbon cutting, which we're very excited about, we need to have the rates and fees set by council. They're actually statutorily approved, and some municipalities actually don't bring it before the city council. I'm choosing to request approval of this amount so that the city council is aware that this is up and running. We don't expect there to be costs associated with it from the municipality's perspective. However, when we first applied for this back in April of 2019, there was an expectation that the city would kick in about $500 per unit. Since then, the legislation has been changed to allow the 10% allowable expense to cover those expenses. ChargePoint is the master company. Once the City Council authorizes this and we turn on, if you will, ChargePoint, the EV car charging station automatically gets uploaded into the app, which means that anybody that has an electric car, they have an app on their phones or available to them if they don't have a phone that tells them where all the EV car charging stations are. It's almost like a geocache. Once you have one, you sort of play a game and you go out of your way to find these EV car charging stations. If you recall, we purposely put it on the municipal lot in front of the pick and shovel because part of the design of the project is that you put it within walking distance of amenities. So we've hit all the salient points. This is the last detail to address. We can hit the switch tomorrow, and then it's live, and we will have a ribbon cutting. So I'll let Chris Roy know when to meet us down there, if you will. So the rate that we're proposing at this particular time is 18 cents a kilowatt hour with an additional $1 an hour after 4 hours with a maximum of $30 per session for the dollar charge. And the purpose of that dollar is because if a car is parked there for 4 hours, you really need to have it move along. So it's incentive to buy what you need and then move along. If there's enough demand in future years, we may decide that it's appropriate to put another one there under the same program. For now, I understand that the state office building is looking to put one in, so we may not need one if they're going to be doing that. So that 10% is the allowable expense for a processing fee charged by ChargePoint to cover the city's expenses. So that's actually new since we originally proposed the grant and the project. So if there's no questions, or if anybody does have any questions, please feel free.
So basically we will receive well, depending on who uses it, we will receive a monthly payment from ChargePoint minus the 10%, whatever their fees are.
Correct.
Other questions from council members? Okay.
This is the city's responsible for the maintenance of it. I don't know if they require much maintenance or not, but is that on our dime?
They have a warranty for, I think it's 2 years, and I assume that the city will be responsible for that, and it's most likely a phone call to the entity that installed it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
There's not a lot of mechanical parts except for the actual plug-in unit. So I don't know well, with electronics, who knows what can go wrong, but I'm assuming this unit probably will work in 20 below weather or 30 below, whatever. And so, other questions? Any council members? Then, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the recommended rate structure.
This is Melissa. I'll move to accept the recommended rate structure for the EV charging station.
A motion made by Ms. Pedersen. Is there a second?
Dan Ross, second.
Seconded by Mr. Ross. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Motion carries. Mr. Roy, you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. How many cars can charge at one time, or is it one car per unit? And what's the average length of a charge? Or does it depend on how low the battery is?
I was going to say that can only handle one car at a time. And then it all depends on the type of battery that's being charged. Now this one isn't the real high-end fast charging. It's like a middle of the road, so it's so much per whatever to charge the battery. I know they've got real high-end ones that charge in a matter of like half an hour to an hour or so. But it all depends on the type of charging station that was installed. I'll let Laura follow up on that, but I think we're a middle-of-the-road one, right?
That is correct, and my understanding is the next generation of grants are going to have the high-powered one that you talked about, but you're right on target.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Very good. So the motion carries, and we can set the rates and turn the switch.
Great, thank you, and I'll be in touch with the council members for a picture in the paper. Jim said we could use his car. the only one I know that has a car like that. His wife's car.
Yeah, we take that up with her.
Can you hear me, Laura? I pulled
Yes,
my network cable out, and so I had to plug it back in.
You're okay.
I pulled the wire out of my computer. Okay, at least I didn't completely disconnect. I got it back in.
You're good.
Okay, so we'll move on then. New business. I don't have any new business. Mr. Ross?
No new business.
Mr. Charbonneau?
No new business.
Mr. Wilson?
None.
Ms. Patterson?
None.
Okay. Laura, any new business?
No, thank you.
Does Mr. Johnson have anything?
Negative.
Negative, okay. We'll move on to old business. I don't have any old business. Mr. Ross?
No old business.
Mr. Charbonneau?
None.
Ms. Patterson?
None.
Mr. Wilson?
None.
Ms. Dogan?
No, thank you.
And Mr. Johnson?
None.
None? Okay. So the next city council meeting will be Monday, December 7th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. And it will be a remote meeting. Basically, we're going to have remote meetings until further notice, especially with the new directive from the governor and highly recommending that we hold all meetings remote if possible. That was in his latest directive. And so I'm not planning on having any in-person meeting until things improve or the governor changes his directive. And so, once again, the next meeting will be Monday, December 7th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:12.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
A motion made by Mr. Charbonneau. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.